All right, let's get started. So I hope the other people will be able to catch up later. So I'm Matthew Reathers, VP of Software Development here at SPAWNPOINT. The purpose of this webinar is to explain how SPAWNPOINT manages game economy, and that goes from a real currency with payment gateways, integration to virtual currencies, exchange rate, and the flow of currency between users and external payment providers or between user wallets. So we're going to go over all these notions in a minute. I'm going to show you through the control panel what some of the concepts that we're going to be talking about, and that's the control panel that you get when you create an account with SPAWNPOINT. And we'll go over the Android app, the sample Android app with the tic-tac-toe game to illustrate some of these and look at example of implementation using the Android SDK. But you know, this should look very familiar anyway if you're using it for anything else. The reason why we're doing it in Android because there's the in-app process that is not available if you're building a game on a desktop or something like that. So we'll look at the Google in-app process real quick, and then that kind of extends to Apple Pay, Amazon, PlayStation, and all the other providers that support purchase in-app. So let's jump right into it. I skipped the prerequisite because I'm assuming you guys already know a little bit about what SPAWNPOINT is and how to get started. If you don't, I invite you to look at the webinar we did a couple weeks ago. It goes over all the initial configuration and just main services through the tic-tac-toe app and where to find documentation and other resources. So when you create your application, you're going to have access to the control panel. Control panel shows you all the data that is available to you, allows you to set up different kind of things, activities and achievements, all that stuff. As far as the game economy is concerned, that's mostly going to be in the store section. By the way, if you have any question or comment as I'm going through this demonstration, you can just use the chat, the Zoom chat, in order to ask the question, and I'll just stop and answer. I think there's a way to also raise your hand, but I don't know the top of my hand. So there's two main things to consider when we talk about game economy in SPAWNPOINT. I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right, there you go. So the concept of user wallets and the concept of real currency payments. So the user wallets, essentially, they're virtual wallets that can be in real currency or virtual currency. But the fact that they are in real currency, as far as the wallets are concerned, it really doesn't impact how real money is actually coming to and from bank accounts. This is just it's a virtual representation anyways. So the wallets can be used to pay for virtual currency items, and they can be in virtual or real currency, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day. If it matters how the currency get in there. It doesn't matter if it actually represents a real currency as far as the platform is concerned. So when you go to the control panel, and you set up your game economy, this is the first screen that you want to look at, and this is going to be your currency setup. So we see two tabs here, real and virtual. The important things here are the symbols used. That's for your UI. That's for your UI visualization. Essentially, these are GIF images. The currency code. This is the ISO 3 currency code. That's really important because that's the thing you're going to use all the way throughout the lifespan of your application to refer to this currency. And the exchange rate. So the exchange rate here is it's based on a default currency, right? So if we look at this particular setup here, we got our US dollar as our default real currency, and the exchange rate for British pound is 1 to 1. So this is inaccurate, but it just to show you. And to euros is 1.21. So these are not automatically set because depending on what service you want to use, maybe you're gonna have different exchange rate. So you have to maintain these on your own. But these are going to be used if you have a store that's in multiple countries, and you can set a price in US dollar for an item, and it will automatically show the price in the user currency if you decide to do so. So that will allow you to manage your items only one price at a time. It's not always relevant because maybe in some countries you want the item to be more or less expensive depending on the actual value of the money over there and what people can afford. So this is the useful to a certain extent. It gets a little bit more useful when you're looking at virtual currency, and here we got our default gold and silver when you set up the platform, because you can actually set up exchange rates between virtual currencies, and that will allow you to have purchase gold and silver and create kind of a tiered economy on the virtual currency side. And you can also then create additional virtual currency. So you just specify the code, the exchange rate, the name, and then you can optionally specify an icon. And then Font Awesome already integrated. If you use that, you can just pass the name of the class for the virtual currency, and it will actually show up here. So for the purpose of this demonstration, we created a currency called tic-tac-toe dollars. The code is TTD, no exchange rate. We don't really care about that right now. It's a virtual currency. And we didn't assign any specific icon. That's for you guys to do it when you start playing with the example code. So the starting point for your virtual economy. Now, how we use it is through the store. So for the purpose of this application, we created different type of items. And I'll show you how the virtual currency applies to those, and then the game entry fee we'll use to illustrate how the virtual currency can be used to charge people to enter games through the mechanism of entitlements. Okay, so let's jump right into it. We're going to start with a simple example of a regular item that is a game piece color. So for those of you who haven't looked at the last webinar, the application, it's a tic-tac-toe game. And there is an option in the game to be able to choose the color of your game pieces. Right, so these are our items in the store right now. And they're in virtual currency. They're set up in virtual currency. So to talk a little bit more about the store items, once you go to the control panel, I think everything is going to look pretty obvious. We got the main store item fields here. What's important is that when we talk about purchases, you have to have a SKU attached to the item. So for those of you who have played with the Google Play Store or maybe other stores, they have a little bit different way to organize things where the options for an object are defined at the item level. So in the Google Play Store, you would have to create multiple items if you wanted to have, let's say, a blue, a red, a yellow, a green, even though they're essentially the same item. So we organized it a little bit differently, where we have an item with multiple SKUs, and the SKUs represent the options that allows us to look at items specifically when we do the reporting, and you're not necessarily interested in knowing about the option that was chosen. You just want to see how many of the items were purchased. And that also ties into the notion of user inventory, where maybe you want to check if they have bought this specific item as opposed to the red or yellow or blue item. So that's a little bit different, but what you get, with that you don't get in the store is like a level of details for reporting that if you guys have played with the Google Play Store, they don't have report, you don't know who bought what, and you have orders, right? But you cannot look at a particular user and see what they have in their inventory. So this is going to be available through the platform. It's very, very easy. So here we created an item called game piece red, and this has a game piece red SKU. So in this particular example, it's one item, one SKU, but ideally we would be set up with one item and one SKU per color. So here we got our game piece red. That's a $100 tic-tac-toe dollars. So this is defining right here. You can choose the currency. You can see all the currencies here. Optionally, you can specify an inventory. That's the number of item of that specific hue that are available for purchase, and the minimum inventory threshold, which would be used to send an alert when the inventory becomes very, very low. And then you got a start and end date that makes it available to purchase. That's if you want to do promotions, maybe, and future objects, maybe you want to show them in the store, but they're not purchasable yet. So you can kind of tease people by using start and end date here. And there's also one at the item level if you want to do it at the item level. And then the additional properties section, really that's just to customize your item SKUs with maybe a specific photo of the yellow item instead of the red item. So that could be a thumbnail that is specific to the SKU, or whatever is specific to that SKU. And these are all the custom properties that you can add to this SKU. So a very, very important part of the economy that dictates kind of how items behave in the lifespan of your user account is the behaviors system. So these, we have multiple behavior here. Some of them might be already familiar, some of them may be more complicated. For example, limited gettable will allow you to specify how many times a user can purchase this item. Consumable is how many times they can actually use it, and we'll see how to use that through the entitlement system. And then expirable is basically how long the inventory is going to be active before it gets deleted. Time period gettable, that's the same as gettable, but with a time frame, and time period usable is it tells. It gives a constraint on how fast you have to use the item before it gets inactive. This is kind of similar to expirable, but you can impose different type of constraint with this one. Prerequisite entitlement is the behavior allows you to specify that you have to have another item in your inventory before you can buy this item, and that can be useful for items that you want to limit to people that have reached a certain level or that achieved a certain challenge or something like that. So you can give them entitlement items, which are kind of like store items but without price. And only people that have this item can purchase this new item. And then finally, we'll talk about this one a little bit more later. The spendable behavior, and that's when you purchase virtual currency with real currency, and that allows you to create an items, for example, a package of 100 tic-tac-toe dollars, how it's going to be fulfilled to the wallet. So we'll go back into we'll get back to that a little bit later. So here we created our game piece red, and it costs 100 tic-tac-toe dollars, right? So now in your app, you can actually refer to this item ID here by one, and you can start creating cards and invoices and things like that. So we can actually go through that flow real quick. So if we look at the app here, we have a store that shows the available items that we have set up. And my balance is already 300 tic-tac-toe dollars for this specific user. And it has also a bundle, and I'll get to bundle if we have time. But here you can see I already purchased this game piece colors here. And if we go back to the user inventory, so I'm going to go to my control panel back. I have a user called Let's Bet. And if I go to the user inventory, it will show that I already have the game piece red, and I didn't specify any particular behavior on it, except that it's fulfillable to the inventory, so that when I purchase it, it will keep track of that in my inventory, and it is active. So this is the item that I purchased on the last demo, and there was no expiration, so there you go. Here's my item. Now, if we look at the payment history, we're going to look at orders for that specific user, and you will see that my purchase is way down there. We'll show you that I actually purchased that game piece red, and this is essentially the invoice. And this will also tell you, okay, the currency and which wallet transaction it maps to. Every time you make a purchase, you have to go through cart and create an invoice for that cart and pay the invoice. When you do that, it will also create a wallet transaction to keep track of that payment, and that's going to be used for reporting, but also to do item level refunds. So you have to refund the entire invoice. So this is something, for example, that Google Play Store doesn't support at all. They pretty much don't have virtual currency. You can buy a bundle of virtual currency through the in-app purchase flow, and we'll see how to do that later. But then they don't deal with virtual currency at all, and they, of course, they don't deal with refunds and all that stuff. So when you create a virtual currency, it will create automatically a user wallet for that currency, and that wallet is a ledger for that particular currency. If I'm looking at this particular user right now, at my tic-tac-toe dollars, I can see all my wallet transactions through here. And if we look at the bottom one, this is the one I just showed you earlier. I got charged 100 tic-tac-toe dollars for my red game piece, and that has been, and that was an invoice fulfillment. This screen doesn't show which invoice, but you can actually get it from the API if you wanted. The other things that you're going to see in here are transactions related to money that I earn through the game reward. So here I won a game, I got 25 tic-tac-toe dollars, boom, 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 all the way up, and you can see the balance change resulting from each of these changes. So currently my wallet balance is 330. So that's what you're looking at on this screen. So I'm going to go ahead and purchase the blue piece. And before I do that, I'm going to show you what's going to happen in the code. That's going to go through the store. And that's going to describe the purchase flow. So here I'm going to get a reference to my wallet API, and I'm going to create a call to load the wallet in the tic-tac-toe dollar virtual currency. So that's what's going to enable me to display my balance right here. So this is this piece of the code right here. Now I'm going to do another call. So we can skip over that. That doesn't matter. That's when we talk about Stripe. I'm loading my inventory, so that's going to enable me to show what I've purchased. So this is how I know that the game piece has been purchased. So this is the inventory, user inventory call. And when the inventory is loaded, now I have all my elements displayed on the page so that I can do the purchase. When I click the button to actually do a purchase, this is going to kick off the purchase flow, which starts here. And the first thing you're going to need to do is create a card. And that's just pretty much just a simple REST call to create the card. You pass it which virtual currency this card is going to be in. And that's going to block other items to be added if they're not in that particular virtual currency. Then I'm going to be adding the item to the cart. So based on my card ID that I got from the previous API call, I'm going to use the item ID that I set up in the store and add it to the cart. And then once the cart is created, I automatically going to jump to create an invoice because that's a quick virtual currency purchase. So I don't need the user approval basically to start the charge. And then once the invoice is created, I'm going to initiate the payment. And I'm going to tell the backend that I want to pay this invoice through my wallet. This is going to be this piece of code right here. So it's going to charge the wallet, and then if everything is good, then it will go to the successful payment. It will add the user, the item to my inventory automatically because that's the behavior I set up on my item store. And if I don't have any fund to pay for the invoice, it will notify me here. So even if somebody tries to, the app gets out of sync for some reason, and they try to make the purchase, and the balance has already changed, it will block them on the server anyways. You got to make sure that you listen for that response from the server and not assume that you will go through because the app says so. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. That created the card, creating the invoice, paying the invoice. And now it is waiting a little bit to get the confirmation from the server, and that's going to refresh the page and show you the result of that operation. This is my current balance, minus the 200 tic-tac-toe dollars, and I purchased it. It's all good. If I go back to my wallets, we're going to see a wallet transaction here at the bottom. Actually, at the top, I'm sorry. This, so the new balance reflected here, the charge. And if I go into my orders, I will see the invoice for that transaction paid and fulfilled. And that means the item is going to be in my inventory if everything went well, and it's right here, and it's active. So now that allows me to go back to my app, and if I go back to my profile, the profile is actually also loading the inventory to show what's available, and I now have the blue game piece, and the black is by default. That's why you don't see it in the inventory, but it has my red piece and my blue piece available. So now I can actually say, I'm going to play with my blue piece. So that's how you do a virtual currency, a purchase of an item in the virtual currency. Now, how the users get virtual currency, it can be from buying the virtual currency using real dollars through a credit card checkout or through an in-app purchase on the Google Play or whatever other payment provider you use, Stripe or anything like that. It can also be awarded through different actions. It could be a reward from the game that you win, or it could be just virtual currency that you get when you register. This can be all set up through the rule engine, and that's a little bit out of scope. But the rule engine will allow you to set up things like when this happened, verify this condition, and if the condition is verified, then take this action. And the action could be give this many virtual currency to this user. And that could be, for example, when the user registers, just give them 100 tic-tac-toe dollars. That's a typical kind of flow when you start monetizing your game, where you're going to give the users virtual currency at the beginning, and they're going to use the virtual currency to play games. And eventually, they'll run out of money if they don't win, and they will want to maybe purchase additional options that will make it easier to win the games. So the tic-tac-toe example, of course, is not super useful, but if you're doing a sport game and they can buy equipment, as they go through the level with their free currency that they got, eventually, other people will start buying equipment and they'll get better, and you will lose, and you stop playing, you're going to run out of virtual currency, and that's when you will offer them to buy more virtual currency using real dollars. So that's kind of your hook for the monetization at the basic level. So these type of transactions, they're a little bit different. You still create a store item, but your store item is going to look a little bit different when we look at the behavior. So this particular item, I'm going to allow a user to purchase a bundle, if you will, of 100 tic-tac-toe dollars. So again, I'm going to create a SKU that's going to allow me to add the SKU to his cart later in transaction. The thing that's different here is that we have a price in dollars. So the item is published, so on and so forth. So this is the cost of the bundle of 100 tic-tac-toe dollars. And two things that are really important here is to add the spendable behavior. So that's going to say that this item, when it's going to be purchased, is going to give you 100 tic-tac-toe dollars, and that is fulfillable to the wallet. So these two behaviors typically go together. If it's spendable and you don't fulfill to the wallet, then it doesn't matter. It's not going to give it to you. And the platform will inform you that these two behaviors have to be added together. So we can go through that flow again. This is pretty much the same flow as the flow to buy virtual currency, so we don't necessarily have to go through it again. The difference is going to be when you do the payment, the collection of the credit card information. So here I create my cart. This cart is going to be in US dollars. And then I'm going to add my item, and I'm going to create an invoice just like we did earlier. The difference is that we're not going to be able to pay the invoice right away. And when you talk about real currency, you can, as a user, you cannot pay the invoice yourself directly through the API. You have to make a payment to a third party, and then the third party typically will do a callback on the back channel, and then that's going to kick off the the invoice payment process once the card has been confirmed as charged by the third-party provider. So the third-party provider can be Stripe, it can be Google Play with in-app purchase flow, it can be any other third-party. And we support a number of integrations. We support Apple and Google out of the box. We support Stripe and Authorize.net. I can't remember the other ones, but like most of the standard payment providers. So there's a little break in the flow when we look at the game compared to the purchase of virtual dollars, because we know how much you have in your wallet and we can charge you right away. In the case of a purchase of a virtual currency, we actually have to collect the payment information at some point. So here, if I click this, actually there's an error there because I changed something. Let's see if I can show it to you from here, maybe. I already have the subscription. I'm going to go ahead and cancel the subscription, and I'll show you what it looks like if I want to do another purchase in real currency. Oh yeah, I can't do that right now. But I mean, essentially, I'm sorry for that. But essentially, I mean, I'll click here, click this, and then instead of charging me right away, you will ask me for my credit card information, or you will ask me to choose an existing payment method. So my existing payment method, again, it's available through the user control panel here. If you go to payments, here I previously entered my credit card information, so I have a Stripe account in the system already that I can use for later. Just a quick note that we're not PCI compliant, so we're not actually saving those credit card numbers, so there's no security concerns here when we go through Stripe. What we actually save are card tokens. So they're encrypted card ID that really don't mean anything, and that's what we pass to Stripe when you want to reuse that same card. And Stripe actually takes care of saving the credit card information on their end securely and charging the card through the card token that we have on site. So I'm going to try to see if I got the order for my 100 tic-tac-toe dollars. So I'll show you what it looks like if I actually went through the flow. And this is this thing here. This is the invoice from where, no, never mind, this is not this one. We actually don't have a purchase in dollars here. That's bad. Okay. Can't show you that. Fortunately, it is going to look exactly the same. The difference here is that it will show you that it's going to be US dollars, etc. And it will show you the associated transaction details here. But instead of being a transaction through a wallet, it's actually going to be a transaction through through Stripe, and you will have access to the full Stripe details when that happens, and then you can go to your Stripe account to check that. So to set that up, you have to actually have a Stripe account, and you have to set up the integration in the platform. If you go in the settings, you look for a setting for Stripe, it will ask you for your API key, and Stripe has the ability to have developer accounts. That's how you link your SPAWNPOINT account and your Stripe account. So we don't have access to your Stripe account. You can set up your key in Stripe to give us access to only specific things. Really, all we care about is tokenization of the card, and you have to go to your Stripe account and specify us as a recipient of credit card charge confirmations. And that's documented in the developer documentation on our wiki. So now, another things that we can talk about quickly is the subscriptions. So subscriptions are regular items, but the way they're structured is a little bit different because the SKUs are tied to payment plans, and they're tied to different phases of your subscription, and you can be charged different things at different times. For example, if we look at creating a subscription here, the default fields look just like a regular store item. There's going to be a little bit different approach here, whether you want the subscriptions to be consolidated, meaning everybody is charged at the same date, or if you and they're prorated, or you want it to be based on the date that they purchased the item. So if you leave by default, the behavior is to just charge on the day off subscription plus the payment period set in your plan. So in your store item, you would typically add SKUs. Here you actually deal with plans, and then it creates SKUs in the background for you. And each of these screens will map to a different SKU in the background. The general configuration, publish, consolidated, you can do at the plan level, which currency it's going to be. So this is kind of really similar to SKUs. The specificities are here, where you get an initial fee, which could be an introductory fee, and you can set it lower. That is the SKU that you're going to use when creating the cart, when the user subscribed to the product the first time. The first bill date allows you to set up delays. If you want to bill a little bit later, last bill date allows you to set up a restriction on the number of renewal of the subscription. You can also set it up so that it will migrate to a different plan at the end of the billing period. That can be used to set up things like first month's introductory rate, or maybe first 3 months free, and automatically renewal to a $120 a month payment plan. So you can set up a plan for the first 3 months, and then you can set it to migrate automatically to a second plan that is more expensive with different options. Subscription costs, so this is the cost of the renewal. So it can be the same as initial fee, or it can be different. And this will allow you to set up how often you want the subscription to get rebilled. So day or months. The grace period is used for when the payment is delinquent. You don't necessarily cancel the subscription right away. You give the user a chance to try again. And then here you can also tell the system the number of billing attempts before you give up and you consider this payment delinquent. Other options, the optional minimum number of terms. So that's somebody purchasing a subscription, a monthly subscription. They with a preferred rate, maybe you have a minimum requirement of 12 months before they can cancel. Reactivation fee, that's when the payment gets delinquent and they want to renew the subscription. And a late payment fee if the payment is delinquent, and that's going to be accumulating on the invoices. And then you get your typical additional properties. If you want to customize that plan, maybe icons, specific fields that are relevant in your own application, etc., etc. So you can have multiple plans. Typically, you have multiple plans if you want to set up a subscription that has different fees depending on the terms. If they get like a yearly, for example, they're going to be cheaper than monthly because you get a lump sum. And then you can also use multiple plans, like I said, when you want to have an introductory plan, and then have them automatically migrate to a paying plan. Subscriptions works the same in the purchase flow as a regular item. You add it to the cart, create an invoice, pay it, done. Um, it will automatically have the fulfillable behavior, and it will automatically have a limited gettable of 1 so that you don't purchase the same subscription twice. And then the fulfillment, it directly goes to the inventory so we can actually track the user subscriptions. And you can see them through the inventory, but there's a special screen that shows you also the subscriptions that you have, whether they're in good standing or not. Basically shows you all the terms here and what payment method is associated to the subscription. That can be actually changed later. You can revoke the subscription or reactivate it if it's canceled from the control panel directly. And the subscription is also going to show in your inventory. The reason for that is because we're going to be able to use that for a prerequisite for some things. So for example, you need to be subscribed to purchase an item, or you need to be subscribed to play a game. That's going to use the inventory entry attached to the subscription. It allows you also to manage the status of the inventory separately if you want to override some of the different subscription behavior. So the last piece I want to talk to, because we're running out of time, is how you can use these different things in the context of a game, and how it can be applied to restricting access to certain things. So by default in the Tic-Tac-Toe app, I can go and play a game for free. This thing here is tied to what we call an activity. An activity is essentially just a representation of a game. So it's a game session, sort of. It allows you to define some settings that are particular to the game and that we will have to set up at runtime. So it could be the difficulty level. It could be, I don't know, really like if it's a trivia game, it could be the category of questions, anything that is going to have to be picked at runtime. Entitlement here, so that ties into the store items that we talked about earlier. You can actually add an entitlement to force the user to purchase an item or have it in their inventory before they can actually play the game. And they don't have to buy it, right? It can be an entitlement that they earn through playing another activity, and that allows you to kind of do activity tiers where they can only play level 1, and then they have to have won the level 1 activity to be able to play level 2, etc., etc. So you can set it up so that each activity is rewarded with the entitlement to play the next activity, and then every activity is set up so that it requires the entitlement of the previous activity. So these are the two kind of side of that process. You can reward an item, or you can actually request an item before you can play the activity. So by default, you create an activity, there's no entitlement. I can go and play this activity for free, and that's going to be the default code in the sample. It just starts an activity, and that's it. So I can, like, as you can see here, I was able to start the activity. It didn't ask for anything. If I now say that the activity is going to require an entitlement, I can make the change in the control panel, and you're going to see that it's going to immediately apply to the application. So I'm going to try to start a game, and this is going to go and check my entitlement, and now I'm blocked. So this is telling me that I don't have an entitlement. I didn't send an entitlement with this activity. And that's pretty much the step one of the verification process, where it expects me to tell it which entitlement I want to use to play this activity, because an activity can have multiple entitlement requested. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I actually need to start this activity and specify which entitlement I'm going to use to play that activity. And that is going to be, sorry, in the game, I'm going to create a reference to that entitlement item, and I'm going to add it to my call that starts an activity. I'm going to restart my application. I'm going to get a different error now because I did not purchase the entitlement for this activity. So it will complain when it starts. Come on. It's slow. There we go. I'm going to log in again. I'm going to try to play the game. Now I'm going to get blocked because I don't have the entitlement. So it's complaining here that I didn't select one of the entitlement available. So I'm going to say, okay, now I actually want to purchase the entitlement. Hold on a second. To go back to the store. I'm going to go ahead and create my entitlement. We only have 10 minutes, so this is going to be really, really quick. Entry fee. It's not showing me the entitlement for some reason. But it's complaining that I don't have the entitlement. So I will have to purchase that entitlement. Unfortunately, I'm running out of time, so I'll probably do a part 2 to go over the whole process. What I'm going to have to do before I can play the activity is actually purchase the entitlement. And that's instead of charging the wallet directly, we'll do it through entitlement, and that allows you to give the entitlement to somebody as a reward instead of just charging the wallet directly. But if you don't reward it, the user has to buy it. You can use the quick buy process flow, and that will essentially allow you to specify the entitlement item that you want to buy. And this is this item here. I get the SKUs set up to the game fee, and I'm going to use the quick purchase flow, which allows me to skip the whole cart, invoice, etc. when you only purchases one single item through virtual currency, and you have the funds in your wallet. So this is just allows you to do it in 3-4 lines instead of this process that we saw earlier. So once I purchase this, that's gonna go in my inventory, and now the activity is gonna be able to look up the inventory at the start of the application and allow me to play in the game. And because I set up my, we look at the store, I set up my item as a one-time only usable through the consumable behavior. Essentially, it will consume the entitlement when you start the activity, and if you don't purchase it again, the activity will block you. It will be deactivated in your inventory because you used it, and you have to purchase it again. So that kind of covers a lot of ground. Unfortunately, yes, I would like to have a little bit more time. So I'm going to open the I'm going to open the session to questions. If you have any, go ahead and type in the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and push these changes I made to the application to reflect the content of this webinar on GitHub. And it will show the entitlement piece and I'll fix the errors that we ran into earlier. But that's the baseline for starting a game economy. There's a lot more things that you want to consider when you do your game economy, and that would be like the number of virtual currencies that are actually available in the system, so that you prevent inflations. You can actually build like a really complex economy that reflects almost like a real world banking system. So that's a little bit more advanced for this particular webinar topic, but we'll keep enhancing the documentation over the next few months, and we'll do probably a part two of this webinar to go over some of the more complex aspects and some of the other stuff that we didn't talk about, like bundles and coupons and sales, vouchers, etc., etc. The rewards and managing user inventory through these mechanisms. So I don't think I see any question in the chat. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll be posting this video on our website very soon in the next day or so. You can refer back to it. And again, if you don't have an account, go ahead and create an account. It's free. You'll get access to Slack, so you're able to chat with one of the engineers here directly, and we can help you with some with technical questions without you guys having to go through support and the salespeople, etc. We'll have engineer to engineer conversation. Also, for you guys, if you need to give us feedback and maybe suggest some features that we would want to add, and we're constantly evolving the platform, so comments are definitely much welcome. Thank you very much, and have a nice day, and ready to talk to you guys. Bye.